What's good, fight fans? We are fresh off of the madness of UFC 302, and we get a live card in Louisville. It's a little more exciting when fight nights end up in front of live fans. I love it way more than the Apex, and one of the fights that's sure to have fans on their feet is going to be Zachary Reese getting his second shot in the UFC after being slam KO'd, and he takes on the wild Julian Marquez, who has never won by anything other than finish. This has all the makings of being a great fight. The under 1.5 is the favorite. Today we're going to take a look at both fighters' recent performances, maybe earlier on in their career, and we're going to try and pick out the best bet for you guys. If you guys want inside info to all my breakdowns for UFC Louisville, I will put the Google Doc in the description below. You can go ahead and check that out. But without further ado, let's get into the breakdown. And if I make any live bets, you'll see it on X. And I'm also going to be using YouTube posts more often now. I was doing Bet MMA tips, but for UFC 302, I had a lot of fight props like takedowns and significant strikes. I cannot track it on Bet MMA tips. So I'm going to use the YouTube live posts, videos, and X for my picks, and you guys can keep updated and posted there, as well as on the Google document. I will have a page at the bottom of my picks, especially when they are official. But without further ado, let's get straight into the breakdown. Zach Reese versus Julian Marquez.
Oh, Till's out! It's over!
It's over! It's over! That's what I'm saying, boy!
Oh!
He got dropped!
It's over! It's over! Munoz! Oh my God!
So as I said before, this fight has all the makings of being one of the best on UFC Louisville. Julian Marquez, the Miley Cyrus lover, has finished opponents nonstop in his career. He goes to war, but there's going to be a considerable change going into this fight, and that being he has moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and he has begun training at MMA Lab. So he's training with Jared Cannonier and a bunch of high-level mixed martial arts talent and UFC competition. So I'm interested to see how that kind of shapes him. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to take a look at some of his recent performances. The Mark Barriault fight, which is his last performance in a loss, he looked really impressive in the first round. His boxing was slick. His simple 1-2s were landing at will with the big right hand, and his clinch striking is very developed. He's got clinch knees, and I love his overhand recklessness in the clinch where he is able to land shots. Issue is, second round, very different story. It felt like Marquez, due to fatigue, was slowing considerably, and power bars started to take over in the clinch, and Marquez fell susceptible extremely to the forward pressure of Barriault. Marquez did keep throwing with power, but Barriault fought through punches, and he got Marquez up against the fence and showed kind of an unrealistic cardio against the fence, landing elbows in the clinch, knees in the clinch, uppercuts in the clinch. Just put so much output. Now, I don't know if this is much to say against Marquez's cardio, which in the past has been impressive and survived through the second round, even though Marquez does find finishes before the third round even starts. I don't know if it's much to say against his cardio. In his Contender Series way back, you get to see that wild recklessness. He has power in both hands. He's primarily a boxer. When he's fresh in fights, he'll punch into the clinch, and from there, he will go after heavy shots, either looping or inside with uppercuts and knees, though he doesn't have many TKO finishes with either his hands or his knees. Grappling and takedown-wise, Marquez has definitely shown that he can be taken down, but because he's confident in his jiu-jitsu and his ground game, he's been taken down, and Maki Pitolo found out late in the third round of their contest that Marquez's jiu-jitsu skills are something that nobody really wants to mess with. He has submissions throughout his career, and starting with the damage from the clinch, Julian Marquez forced a bad shot from Pitolo, and then he went from a guillotine to a Darce choke in just beautiful fashion. And when it comes to this competition, I think that the submission game is going to be where this fight looks the most intriguing. But nonetheless, the 9-4 record is a little bit less than impressive, and I'm interested to see how he handles the second fight, Zach Reese, who really is a powerful guy with slick submissions in his own right. But let's take a look at Zach Reese. I do have a career highlight video. If you want to see more of his regional career prior to that Cody Brundage fight, you can see it here. He lost his UFC debut, kind of fluky. He was setting up a beautiful submission triangle, ended up getting picked up and slammed by Brundage, and he suffered his first defeat. Prior to that, he hadn't lost since 2012 in his very first amateur fight. I was touting him pretty highly going into that UFC debut because he displayed great power. He's tall at 6'4" with a 77-inch reach. He's going to have a significant advantage against the 6'2", 72-inch reach of Julian Marquez. But the real question is that we really surely should say he trains out of the War Training Center in Texas, a little bit of a lesser-known gym, and he's never been outside the first round. That's what has everybody excited with that under 1.5. But I could see him being tested in this fight by Marquez, who does seem to keep throwing into the second round and third rounds if he does get there. What I loved about him is that he was extremely violent. When he landed a takedown, his elbows from top control were brutal as a regional fighter. He had big power in some spots. He did tend to take fighters down more often, but could stand and trade with the regional talent that he faced off against. And he was landing TKO finishes before, again, getting the call to the UFC and finishing a really tough Eli Aronov on the Contender Series via submission. Zach Reese is no joke on the mats either. He throws up submissions off of his back, and he's a dangerous fighter everywhere. Breakdown-wise, what I am intrigued by on the betting lines, the line is very, very close. Marquez did open as an underdog around plus 113, but he has been pushed to the best line I found at minus 125, whereas Zach Reese is sitting around plus 121 on CloudBet, which is a little bit more of a weak sports book, but he's also sitting around plus 120, and again, the over 1.5 rounds is at plus 125. I do doubt that this fight goes very long, but still, there is a lot of flukiness to that over 1.5 round that really, really does scare me. So what I'd be looking for when DraftKings does release their significant strike numbers, I expect them to be low. If they're a little bit higher than I think, I might play that instead of the 1.5 rounds. Also, the takedown lines. I'm interested to see if they're going to go a little bit above a half a takedown on these fighters, because Marquez can be taken down. He's been taken down, and both guys are very willing to grapple and try to find submission. Zach Reese has 2 submission wins. He submitted his opponent on the Contender Series. He also has 3 submission wins as an amateur, so he is very willing to submit opponents, and Julian Marquez is much of the same. He has rear naked chokes, anaconda chokes. Most of his finish wins do come by submission in the UFC, while also showing some power. He has the head kick KO of Haas back on the Contender Series, but I am going to be very, very stuck on those lines when it comes to the lesser value, the unders in this fight, because I do think that it's highly unlikely that this fight goes very long. That is my breakdown of the fight. You guys can let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you have Marquez or Zach Reese? Do you think Zach Reese can have a bounce back, or do you think Marquez is going to improve to 10-4? Kind of a UFC. He's fought a lot in the UFC. He's had 6 fights in the UFC. His Contender Series was way back in time in 2017 when it was first debuting. So I'm super excited for this fight. It's going to have the fans in Louisville out of their seat for sure. But that'll do it for today. Like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.